One of the complaints we occasionally receive in the Jaipur Literature Festival is that book lovers can be trampled underfoot by the sheer weight of the number of literati crowding in to hear an author in January. That is less likely to be a problem here at Cinema Fushi. I think it's fair to say. This is one of our more exclusive sessions, but it'll be transmitted around the world on our YouTube channel. When we started doing this over lockdown, we were astonished to find that we had more than 20 million downloads with many from most unexpected places like Uzbekistan and China. So if you're watching in one of those places, we were very pleased to have you there. At breakfast this morning, I was trying to convey to an American friend what BN Goswamy would be if he was in an American context. And there's really no equivalent figure in the American art world to BNG. He's part Philip de Montebello, part Simon Sharma, but that doesn't even begin to convey the whole poetic side of it. So add in Wallace Stevens, maybe Sylvia Plath, Robert Lowell, and you begin to get an idea of the man. Because what distinguishes BNG's work is that it is rigorously researched with incredible precision and academic rigor. And yet it's presented in the most beautiful, mellifluous prose and polished with the soul of a poet. And both in his speech and in his written work, there's constant reference to the poetry of the text, which often these paintings are illustrated. I'm carefully avoiding the word miniatures, which I know is one he doesn't like. So what the rest of the world knows as Indian miniatures will here be referred to as Indian painting. And BNG first came into prominence in this world when Indian art history was very much still in the hands of its former colonial masters, who tended to see all Indian painting as belonging to geographical schools. So one had the Kangra school and the Guler school and the Mysore school and even the Company school. BNG realized that, of course, the way that Indian workshops and family organizations operate is not on a geographical basis, it's on the basis of family. And that just like today we were listening to the wonderful musicians who come from a long lineage of sarangi players that go back 14 generations and whose learning is passed from father to son, generation after generation. The same is true of miniature painters, of Indian painters. And that to understand the processes at work, you can't just call something Guler school. You have to understand that there is a group of human beings with their own identities and their own agency producing these works and producing them coming from a particular religious background, a particular social background, in a particular courtly context, and that they're working for a particular patron. And that the patron is interacting with the artist, possibly on a regular basis. In the case of BNG's most famous study, Nine Suk, with his great patron Balwant Singh, and that there is a very intimate relationship between the painter and his family and the painter and his patron. And this led to an early post-colonial scuffle with Bill Archer, who was the then presiding deity of the Indian art world, for which BNG, it's fair to say, emerged victorious with the crown. After which there's been much less talk about regional schools and much more talk, as you would with Western art, just like you wouldn't talk about Vatican School, you'd talk about Raphael and Michelangelo. So you talk about Nine Suk and Manaku and Pandit Su and so on. So I'm not going to talk anymore. BNG will describe his work much better than I ever could. But the key thing to remember is that you are in the presence not only of one of the greatest scholars of Indian art ever, the true successor of Kumaraswamy, but also one of the great writers and aesthetes and rasikas whose appreciation and connoisseurship of this extraordinary tradition of painting is literally unrivaled.
It's a privilege and an honor to be here, speaking to an obviously select gathering. I'll be very brief, introducing a few things. You know, I can be cut off at any point of time because nothing is related to one another and so on. But the point I'm making, which William did far more eloquently than I can, is that we see very little. We are remarkably visually illiterate. And that is something which needs to be addressed. Somebody has to address it. The subtleties which are built into Indian painting. Indian painting is regarded as a kind of a little thing and so on. Miniatures were things which people used to wear around their necks and so on, something at one particular point of time. But these are small works. They're not great big canvases. They're not something which take your breath away immediately and so on. So you have to enter, visually enter a work of art. And whether it is a small painting or a large painting and so on, it doesn't really much matter. But in the case of Indian painting, the subtleties built in by the painters and even also by the patrons, because the patrons contributed to the whole idea of what a painting should be like, have to be understood. You know, a great poet of the 18th century, Mir Taqi Mir, said something very beautifully about subtleties, about the need to approach a work of art with respect. Le saans bhi ahista ke nazuk hai bahut kaam, afaq ki is kargahe shisha gari ka, he said. Breathe gently here and soft, because it is a very, very brittle, very fragile kind of a thing which the worlds on high have created. So when we enter a work of art, we bring respect to it. We understand that there are subtleties built into this particular thing, and they have to be slowly, very, very slowly unwrapped. It's a layered world. If you look at the slide which is projected here, I don't understand anything in it. It's a piece of modern calligraphy by a Syrian artist. I can't make head or tail of it. There are some letters which I can recognize in Persian or Arabic. There is a array, there is a dal and so on and so forth. But what does it mean? Does it come to anything? Can we enter it? I doubt it. I really doubt it. You know, the subtleties. Let me just go outside of the area of painting for a brief moment. There is a very famous text by the great Kalidas, Sanskrit scholar, a great writer, 4th century. He is talking about the goddess Parvati, who's the daughter of the mountain god, and she's mortifying herself to be able to be worthy of winning the hand of the great god Shiva. And she surrounds herself by 4 or 5 fires around herself. There is the fire in the sky above her and so on. And it is hot, it is very hot. And suddenly the rains come. And Kalidas in one shlok, just one shlok, 2 lines, he says, the first drop of rain fell on her forehead, traveled through her eyelashes, trembled for a moment on the tip of her nose, and then stood there for a little while on her lower lip, then fell down on her breasts, and then slowly traveled through three different streams and ended up in a deep pit. What is this? It's beautifully said. But now look at this from another angle. He's actually describing the feminine beauty. All the marks that are there must be there in the beauty of a woman and so on, a young woman, are built into this particular description. She is looking up. Her forehead has, the beautiful woman's forehead is high. The eyelashes are large, so they rest there for a little while, the water does. The tip of the nose has to be a patrician kind of a nose, and she trembles there and so on. Her breasts are firm and close to each other, so when the drop of the rain falls on them, they break up into smithereens, and then it follows slowly along her naked stomach, three lines, trivali as it is called, and the pit is the navel into which that single drop of rain falls. Two different levels. At one level, it's a journey of a particular this thing, a drop of rain. On the other hand, is describing the beauty, young, feminine beauty. That's what it is. That is what, in a certain sense, we have sensitized to ourselves to. That there is the obvious, there is the outer skin, and then, of course, we enter this down below. Time is bearing down on us. So we see very little. This is an image which I am fond of. I went to Jaisalmer a long time ago, and I wanted to see the collection of miniatures in there. There were some murals, and I was told that the room is locked. So, because the curator's grandmother has died for the 5th time or something like that, and so on. So anyway, it had a wooden door, it had a little chink. I put my camera against that and took an image. I have no idea what is inside. I can see some women, right? Who are they? Princesses, they are worshippers, devotees of Krishna. I have no idea. Just a glimpse, a passing glimpse, I was able to capture. That is what we do. But inside, if you look, there's a dazzling picture of a young woman standing, holding the branch of a particular flowering tree, like that. What is it? Is she only beautiful? Is there a story to it, and so on? No, that is the point. You see, there is a belief in Indian myth that if a tree has gone completely dry, and a most beautiful woman, a Padmini Nayaka, touches it, it suddenly blossoms. That's what's happening here. It would not blossom till she holds with her left hand the branch of that shrunken, desiccated tree. So there are all kinds of things happening. A painting which is just about everyone's favorite. Do we see the painting? Do we recognize what is inside of it? I doubt it. It is a well-known scene from a great text of the 12th century called the Geet Govind, in the love of Radha and Krishna. Now, let's look at it from a little close. In the very beginning of that particular great 12th century Sanskrit work, the father of Krishna, the stepfather, foster father, he says to Radha, who is his beloved, that it's going to be a thunderstorm, and this young man, this boyish figure, is going to get very afraid. Take him home. So Radha, who's a little older than Krishna, so takes him home. And the poet says, on the way home, when it was getting dark and under the trees and so on, their love began to unfold. Now that is the key, unfolded. Everything is dark. The dark mystery of the night You can see for yourself the stars are beginning to appear and so on like that. But in the midst of that darkness, these two figures stand embracing each other shyly to begin with, perfectly lit against a completely dark background. But you can see details like this. Now he reaches out for her breast. She makes a kind of futile gesture of putting his hand away. She's not serious about it. You can see that her eyes are locked. You can see that her feet are placed in a manner as if she might break into dance any moment and so on, like that and so on. But is there more to it? Is there more in the painting? Yes, there is. This is the background. And now let's start looking at the trees that the painters have brought into the background. Very far at the back, there's split trunks. And then we move to another tree, the trunks have become a little closer. And still closer. The unfolding of the love between Radha and Krishna. And then we come to the painting. There's a different exposure I've taken. Behind the lovers, there are two trees, one dark, like Krishna, the other light, like the lightning that Radha is, and embracing each other. Suddenly, from a very attractive, undoubtedly attractive painting, we have moved into an understanding of how the painter has the intelligence and the daring at the same time to throw hints in our direction for us to have the temerity, the wisdom, the intelligence, the desire to pick these hints up. What I'm saying is basically very simple. Behind a great deal of these paintings is a lot of poetry, and we have to understand that. Poetry is the soul of Indian painting. Let's look at just this one painting, and I'm going to take some time over it. The time is bearing down on us, so you can ask me to leave it any time or cut it off and so on.
Carry on.
But this is the painting by a great Mughal painter, 16th century, early 17th century, Jahangir period, of a man at the end of his life, the Saturday evening of his life, standing there. Beautifully done. He doesn't have the energy to stand by himself. He's leaning on a staff. His back is bent, shoulders are hunched forward. The background is completely dark. You can see there is hardly any light in his eyes. He's just peering into the dark, hoping to be able to pick up something that he can recognize. You can see that his legs are shrunken and trembly, and there is a little bush. Let's look at this painting again. Each time that I see this painting, each time, and I must have seen it 200 times, a great poem by a contemporary Urdu poet comes to my mind. And I can relate, even though 400 years separate this poem from this particular painting. And I'm going to tax your patience, recite that longish poem by Ali Sardar Jafri. Listen to it with care, because there is not only musicality, but there is extraordinary subtlety. The poem is called Mera Safar, My Journey. He's talking about himself, life. फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, he says. फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, आंखों के दिए बुझ जाएंगे, हाथों के कमल कुमलाएंगे, और बरगे जुबां से नुत्क़ो सदा की हर तितली उड़ जाएगी. Describes death. A day will come when the lamps of your eyes, my eyes will go dim, and when the lotuses of my hand will wilt, and from the branch which is my tongue, all butterflies of speech and articulation will fly away one by one by one. फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, आंखों के दिए बुझ जाएंगे, हाथों के कमल कुमलाएंगे और बरगे जुबां से नुत्को सदा की हर तितली उड़ जाएगी, एक काले समंदर की तह में कलियों की तरह से खिलती हुई, फूलों की तरह से हंसती हुई सारी शक्लें खो जाएंगी. A day will come when in the dark sort of a depth of waters, all the faces that I recognize, all the smiling visages that have been my experience will disappear. फिर कोई नहीं ये पूछेगा. यादों के हंसी बुत खाने से हर चीज़ उठा दी जाएगी. From the great sort of a place where memories are stored, all things will be lifted out and give out of sight. और दिल की धड़कन, खून की गर्दिश, सब रागिनियाँ सो जाएंगी. All the melodies that I hear. And what are the melodies? The beating of my heart. खून की गर्दिश, the coursing of blood through my veins. All these musical modes will disappear. I will not be able to. फिर कोई नहीं ये पूछेगा. Then who's going to ask, where did this man go? सरदार कहाँ है? And then he goes on to say, लेकिन मैं यहाँ फिर आऊँगा, but I'll be back here again. लेकिन मैं यहाँ फिर आऊँगा, बच्चों के दहन से बोलूँगा, चिड़ियों की जुबान में गाऊँगा, और जब बीज उगेंगे धरती में और कोंपलें अपनी उंगली से मट्टी की तहों को छेड़ेंगी, मैं पत्ती पत्ती कली कली फिर अपनी आंखें खोलूँगा. He says, I'll be back here again, and I'll speak through the lisping tongue of the newborn. And when little shoots will start teasing the surface of the soil and little plants come out, I'll open my eyes and see all around myself. And then I'll take dewdrops in fact, put them on my palm and see what weight do they carry. मैं पत्ती पत्ती कली कली, I'll open my eyes through every little leaf that is there. मैं रंग हिना आहंग गज़ल अंदाज़ सकुन बन जाऊँगा और रुखसारे उरूसे नौ की तरह हर आंचल से छन जाऊँगा. I shall turn into the rosy blush on the cheek of the newlywed bride. I shall be seen through the veil of muslin through which you can see her and so on. I shall turn into the rhythm of poetry and so on. और जाड़ों की हवाएं दामन में जब फसल खिज़ां को लाएंगी, रहरों के थमा कदमों के तले मेरे चलने, सूखे हुए पत्तों से मेरे चलने की सदाएं आएंगी. When winter comes and leaves fall, then the crunching of the sound of those leaves under young feet will be my feet and my sound. And then he says, Akash ki neeli sab jeele. A day will come when I'm here. Akash ki neeli, all the blue lakes that are there in the skies. Dharti ki sunehri sab nadiyan, all the golden rivers that flow on this fertile land will be filled with my presence. Hasti se meri bhar jayengi. Phir sara zamana dekhega. And then the whole world will see all stories which are being told of lovers and beloveds are the stories. This is the story of me and my wife Sultana. But the end, superb. He says, what am I? मैं एक लरसता कतरा हूँ, मैं एक गुरेजा लम्हा हूँ अयाम के अफसों खाने में. I'm just a fugitive moment in the wonder house of time. मैं एक लरसता कतरा हूँ, I'm just a drop that is trembling on the lip of the carafe of the past about to be poured into the goblet of the future. मैं एक लरसता कतरा हूँ, मसरूफ़ सफ़र जो रहता है, माजी की सुराही के दिल से मुस्तकबल के पैमाने में। मैं सोता हूँ और जागता हूँ और जाग के फिर सो जाता हूँ। सदियों का पुराना खेल हूँ मैं मर के अमर हो जाता हूँ। आई वेक अप, आई स्लीप, आई वेक अप अगेन. So this has gone on for centuries. I do not die. This is where it ends. Why am I reminded of that particular poem, exquisite as it is? Because I pay attention to this little plant. Just everything in the background is completely dark, there's nothing there. But close to the feet of this old man, this plant, which we had not even seen, paid attention to, is there. Is that the promise of return? Is that a hint of what is going to happen in the future? So what am I saying? What are we saying? What are we listening to or seeing? Is there a world of thought behind these paintings? I'm not suggesting that this poet was in a former birth a contemporary of this particular painter, by all means, by no means. But we have to summon to our minds, to ourselves, other things which we didn't expect, didn't suspect, are there in the background of these extraordinary paintings. My plea, therefore, is only this, that like in our traditional sort of aesthetics, let us summon to ourselves the world of poetry and of dance and of music, of words of all kinds and so on, and then see it as a whole, like that. Let's look at another painting. Also Mughal, also of the same period, early 17th century. The great poet Sadi is seated, that white bearded man with the hunching sort of shoulders. And next to him, there is a man who is like him, but who is so excited that he throws up his hands in the air because music is being made, and he's heard a line or a verse which has thrown him into ecstasy. I didn't understand what the painting was all about till I turned it on its back. And there was a text on it by Sadi. And the text is worth listening to. Extraordinary. It's in Persian. You'll forgive me, I mean, I'm talking more about poetry than about painting. No, not really. And the text is really, I mean, has to be heard, to be believed, read to be believed what it contains. Gili khushbu-e dar hamam rozi, rasid az daste bahbubi badastam, bagufta ke mushki ya abiri, ke man az bu-e dilaviz mastam, bagufta man gili na cheez budam, वलेकिन मुद्दते बागुल निशस्तम कमाले हम नशी बर मन असर कर दे वगरना मन हमू खाकम के दस्तम. Persian, I'll translate it. I'm sure most of you don't need the translation, but in any case, he says, one day when I was about to enter the hammam, that's a public bath, my beloved handed me a cake of clay. There used to be no soap at that time. Fine clay is the one with which you cleanse your body. And I put that cake of clay to my nose, and it was exquisitely fragrant. And I was besotted. And I spoke to that cake of clay, and I said, what are you? Are you amber? Are you musk? That I am completely taken by your fragrance? And out of the kindness of its heart, the cake of clay spoke back to me and said to me, Bagufta, mangili na cheez budam. I'm just a humble piece of clay. But I do remember that I come from the same soil in which some roses used to grow. And it is the fragrance of those that makes me what I am. Otherwise, what am I? A piece of dust, a piece of clay. No, I mean, you feel excited by this kind of thing. And I'm not surprised that this old man, I mean, he's throwing up his hands in amazement, in absolute ecstasy, as having heard that, having read that verse, having heard that music being made in which this particular verse is being sung. About time I should wind up. 2 minutes. 1.5. 5. You know, the range of Indian painting is really quite extraordinary. We think, Meera, I know that you have to leave. No, go ahead, please. No, of course, of course. Good luck with the text. You know, there are energies in these paintings. I mean, like this Hamza Nama leaf, and the Umar is throwing balls of naphtha at a great dragon. And just look at the detail. Here he is. Here is that dragon. I mean, it's exquisite in terms of drawing, in terms of imagination of the painter. What source it comes from, China, Central Asia, whatever it is, and so on. On the other hand, there is this extraordinarily delicate. Now there's energy in that, and there is a kind of a conflict in that. And here is a story illustrated by a painter of a young woman who's daughter of a simple potter, Soni by name. A prince comes from Central Asia, falls desperately in love with her, and decides to give up his kingdom, stay there. At the same time, there is no match between the status of these two. So she lives on this side of the river and he on the other side. He gives up his kingdom, becomes a cow herd, a buffalo herd, and so on. Every night they decide to meet. And she slips out of her father's home. She doesn't know how to swim. She takes a pitcher, a clay pitcher, which is baked, puts it under her stomach, and with the aid of that, like a lifebuoy, she crosses the river each night. Just that moment. That is Soni. This picture, this painting has to be enlarged to fit onto a postcard. It's so small. But the delicacy of it, the singing line, I mean, the strokes, I mean, which seem to have been breathed upon paper rather than made with a brush. And we didn't see it at first. But this is the picture under her stomach. And as she moves, the splashes of water and so on, and you can see the painter has created those. And then on the other hand, the gentleman comfortably sits and plays upon his flute on the other bank of the river, and so on and so forth. But we didn't see the conversation between the buffaloes who is brought there for the night. The dragon being killed by Umar, I mean, in the earlier painting, and the sheer delicacy of execution, imagination. It makes you wonder what these people were doing. Lover and beloved, Krishna and Radha, not a stitch of cloth on them, nothing. And in that bower, and up there in the sky, dark clouds which reflect the complexion of Krishna, and the lightning darting through them, reflecting the beauty of the skin of Radha, like this. If we don't look at these, if we pay no attention either to the passion of the fruit of passion, mango, if you do not look at the birds singing in, and if you do not look at the clouds in the sky, we are missing it. Let me leave you with this particular picture, which is a bit of a puzzle. Not much of a puzzle for us, but for many people. Lover and beloved, is it a moment before lovemaking or after lovemaking? Easy enough. If you look at the garland around Krishna's neck, it's broken. If you look at the necklace that she was wearing, broken, and little beads on the bed scattered around. Does it make a difference to our lives? I don't think so. But at the same time it does. At the same time I'm confident that it does. If we sensitize ourselves, if we converse with these paintings, if we ask them questions, if we listen to what they are telling us, if we have the capacity to hear, then we are moving from one level to another, and yet another. I had about 60 more slides, but about time that I withdraw. And may I thank you very much indeed.
You can see why we have always never had a JLF without BNG. It has been my joy to sit on the stage with BNG for many, many of these sessions, to gaze down at the weeping, rapt audience, and BNG waving his magician's wand over the room. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much.